Zayin Tvachim by Zayin Tvachim. We'll see more about that today. Also, the conclusion of the halacha is that if a sukkah is higher than 20 amot, it doesn't make a difference how wide the sukkah is, even though we brought different opinions. If it's higher than 20 amot, higher than 30 to 40 feet, the sukkah is invalid. Can't use such a sukkah. We don't go like those opinions that make a chilek between whether it's 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim or dalet amos by dalet amot, but if it's wider, it will be kosher. No, as long as it's higher than 20 amot, which is like Rav's opinion, higher than 20 amot, you're not sitting in a, it's generally made in a more permanent fashion. It's not, it's, when it's higher than 20 amot, usually you make it with, it's more not a temporary type of dwelling, and therefore it would be an invalid sukkah. You have, say it again? Even if the walls reach the Succah. Right, the Gemara wanted to say there's an opinion that says that when is a sukkah invalid is only when the walls don't reach the schach if it's higher than 20 amot. But if it's higher than 20 amot and the walls reach the schach, your eyes run across the walls. That we don't go with that opinion. Even if the walls reach the schach, which is the common sukkah. The common sukkah is the walls reach the schach. But if it's higher than 20 amot, it is invalid. Therefore, that's why you don't see a sukkah. You don't see a sukkah more than 30 amot, more than 20 amot high, more than 30 feet high. You will not find a sukkah that high. Amot around between a foot and a half to 2 feet. So you wouldn't see a sukkah higher than 30 feet. Now, after we had the discussion about the size of the sukkah, the inside of the sukkah. So now the Gemara comes to conclude that point. We mentioned it yesterday. We're going to start on that point today. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak. Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak said the following. We are on 3A1 on the right side. 3A1 on the right side. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak. Halacha, the law is stricha. A sukkah has to have the width and the length that it has to be able to be large enough to contain his head, most of his body, and a table. That is the bare minimum that a sukkah needs to be able to contain. So now the Gemara, so he makes this statement. The Amalei Rab Abba says to Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak that says that a sukkah needs to be, the size of a sukkah has to be the minimum that you could be able to sit there with, and the majority of your body, your head, and your table. Whose opinion does this go like? He says, Amalei Rab, command Kibbe Shammai. I mean, are you paskening like Beis Shammai? It seems, good morning, Mark. Because there's a Mishnah later on Chavtes, there's a Mishnah later on regarding Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. If somebody, the Mishnah Chavtes, that someone's head and the majority of the body was in the sukkah, but his table was in the house, okay? So his table wasn't in the sukkah. Beis Shammai says it's pasul, it's no good. And Beis Hillel says it is good. So Beis Hillel is more lenient, which Beis Hillel generally is more lenient. And we have this machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says, listen, as long as the Torah says, you have to sit in the sukkah. So you sat in a sukkah. You were in the sukkah, majority of your head, your majority of your body was in the sukkah. The fact that the table was not in the sukkah does not invalidate your sitting in the sukkah. Good morning. You're in the sukkah. In that space, Beis Hillel says you're fine. You fulfilled the mitzvah. Beis Shammai says no, you did not fulfill. You're not fulfill the mitzvah if the only yourself, your head and majority of body were in the sukkah, but the table was not in the sukkah. So that's a machlokas in Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. It depends. Again, if according to Beis Hillel, even a sukkah that's not 7 by 7, let's say it's 6 by 6 tefachim, it's smaller than that. You didn't have enough room for your good morning. You had a sukkah and it did not have enough room for your table, but it had enough room for yourself to be there. Beis Hillel says that's good enough, even though it's not 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim. That's what the Beis Hillel says later on. The sukkah is still a kosher sukkah. Now, but Beis Shammai says no, it's not enough. The sukkah has to be able to have enough space inside the sukkah to also contain your table. If the sukkah cannot hold your table, it's so small that you can't hold your table, it's not a kosher, it's not a good sukkah. What did you say? Oh, very good. So Mr. Haber is asking a great question. What is the problem? Why does Beis Shammai say if a sukkah cannot have, if the space on the inside of the sukkah is not large enough to contain your table, why is that sukkah invalid? So there are different reasons given. Some say the way Mr. Haber was suggesting, that a sukkah, the Torah said you have to dwell in a sukkah the duration of sukkahs. This has to be like your home in a certain sense, right? You're moving out of one area, you're moving out of the comforts of your house, and now you have taken up a new dwelling place. That's not called a dwelling place if you can't, that's not a place of dwelling if you don't have enough room for your table, right? That's what you were saying, Mr. Haber. That would be the reason of base.
How could it be a dwelling place if you can't fit your body in it?
Yeah, okay. So the fact that you could fit most of your body in it, and also at the end of the day, I want it to be a dwelling place, but it's also not a permanent dwelling place. So that's because we know.
How long could you stay in a sukkah that you can fit your upper body in?
Majority, it's not only upper body. Majority of your body.
Let's call your head to your waist, and surely the majority of your body.
Right. But again, you listen. You can have the other part of your body is outside the sukkah, right? And this part of the body is inside the sukkah.
I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning how could you call that a place of dwelling? Manny's question is, how about the table? I'll even say that the whole thing doesn't make sense to a level of, you're not dwelling in it. You could go like that for 5 minutes. How long could you put your head in your body, half of your body in the sukkah and stay there? Try to dwell. That's not dwelling.
Okay, so you're just, yeah, I may understand, but the question is, if you're dwelling, but you're in a temporary dwelling. So the question is, the fact that it's a temporary dwelling, so maybe it's like, a guy goes away for Shabbat. He goes to someone else's house to live, right? You go somewhere. That type of dwelling, when you're leaving the comforts of your home, maybe this is morning, Dr. Navid. Maybe that's called enough, that it reaches when listen, is it a dwelling that you're going ahead and you're going into a house, a building, a structure that the rain could come through? So you could ask the question over there, how is that a dwelling? But that exactly is the dwelling that we're supposed to go into.
I could dwell in a tent in the rain, be wet, and the wind and the weather could get me. I can't go to someone's house on Shabbat with half of my body.
I understand, but the question is, when you have the majority of your body in the sukkah, is that called dwellings? You're saying if the majority of the body is in the sukkah, that's not called dwelling. But do you look at the majority of the body?
I'm not in the position to question the poskim what they're saying. I'm just saying that in
It's
other
not a
words, you could
normal.
say the same way you say your upper body doesn't really qualify as a dwelling. So no, the table doesn't either. That's kind of where I'm going.
Right. Okay, so maybe your thinking might be the reason why there's a different understanding of how to understand the problem. Maybe the understanding of the problem is that there's a rabbinic. Yes, Ariel.
We cannot see the scar, so how can it be approved? Let's say it's by 7
tefachim by 7 tefachim. Listen, inside is like 20 amot high, up to 20.
We don't see the scar. So also going to that, if we accept that 7 tefachim is the minimum width, therefore we could accept that a scarf that is higher than 7 tefachim is accepted because in one cases we won't be able to see the scarf.
Okay, so that's the question. Do we really need to see the schach? So that's different opinions. Why it can't be higher than 20 amot? But Mark, you can, what Mark is saying, because right. But I have other question on Mark's question. With sukkah, what is the minimum height of a sukkah? 10 tefachim. What is 10 tefachim? 10 tefachim is about 28 inches. So you can fit your body in there, right? If you have something, let's say 10 tefachim is anywhere from 25 to 28 inches high. And yet the Torah says, I want you to live in a sukkah, and yet we all know you could fulfill the mitzvah if you make a sukkah that's 10 tefachim high. Now, now the question is that called living in a place that that the height of the structure is 28 inches? So what are we talking about, Mr. Bitesh? 28 inches, we're talking about a little less than 2.5 feet. And yet, right? Yet we say that's called the kosher sukkah, meaning even the opinion that says you could be leaning. What?
You could sit, but you can't fit your whole body in it. How could you sit? How could you sit in something that you can't fit your whole body in?
So that's called you're sitting there.
You could get on your knees. You can get on your knees and slide your upper body in it. That's a kosher sukkah.
That seems to be okay. Again, so how do you explain the guy? If a guy will go ahead and make a sukkah that's 10 tefachim high, that's 20. Let's say even if we'll say the opinion 10 tefachim is
it's the height of the table. It's the height of the table.
One second. Let me correct myself. 10 tefachim warning. 10 tefachim is 40 inches. I'm sorry. Let's say a tefach is between 3.5 to 4 inches. So 10 tefachim would be 40 inches. So okay, we got a little more height on the deal. So we got a little bit let's say it's over 3 feet. But still, it's over 3 feet. It's not, you can't stand in such a place. Even if you can't stand in such a place, that's called dwelling. That's called you're living. If you could sleep there. I don't know if you could sit there and you could, that we say that's still considered, and you could be sitting on your couch, leaning with the majority of your body inside the sukkah. We say that and you have your table. So the bare minimum according to Beis Shammai is you got your table, you got the majority of your body. You can't stand in such a thing, and yet it's the kosher sukkah. So that's a real type of temporary type of dwelling, right? Because there's nobody permanently would be able to live in such a dwelling. So we find that phenomenon that a sukkah could be kosher, even though it's not the norm type of that you would consider a normal type of dwelling. So the question is, how far do we go? At what point do we say this is not called living? So that's one approach. One approach is that the sukkah has to have a certain amount of, it's called dwelling, that you're living in that sukkah. And if the table is outside the sukkah, then it would be, it's called, you're not dwelling in a sukkah. But that's one approach. However, there's other approaches in Beis Shammai. Some want to say that the problem is that if your table is outside, if the sukkah is so small, good morning, Simon, the sukkah is very small, and it only can contain your body and your head, and it's not wide enough to contain the table, there's a concern that you're not going to stay in that sukkah. There's a concern that you're going to eat outside the sukkah, because if your table is outside and you're inside, make the picture of you eating, right? Or you're bringing your food, you're taking your food and you're putting it inside the sukkah and you're eating it inside the sukkah, but the table has no room. You don't have no room to have the table in the sukkah, so the table's right outside the sukkah. So what might happen? You might come to step out of the sukkah, right? If your table where you eat, when you're taking the food from, Mark is here to settle everything. Right, correct thing. If the table, very good. If the table is outside the sukkah, so Beis Shammai is very concerned that what's going to happen? What's going to happen? You're going to go after your table. We're afraid you're going to go where your table is, and therefore Beis Shammai said that sukkah is no good. That is the other approach in Beis Shammai. That's very, very small, right? But again, Mark, but what is 40 inches high? 40 inches high. Right. So and yet it's a kosher sukkah if it's 40 inches high. But the other approach is saying, good morning, Mr. Silverman. We are on Gimel Amen Aleph 3a. The other approach is saying, the question is a sukkah that cannot contain your table. It's not wide enough to contain your head and most of your body. Is that a kosher sukkah on a Torah level? But on a rabbinic level, we say it's not a kosher sukkah because you might come to the sukkah because your table is outside the sukkah because you don't have enough room to contain your table in the sukkah. Or is the sukkah not kosher on a Torah level because that's not called the sukkah? That's the two approaches that you could, is it clear what we're saying over here? The two approaches of what the sukkah, what's the problem with the sukkah that's not long enough and wide enough to contain also your table? That's the question. Is the sukkah invalid on a Torah level? That's not called, you're not called living in the sukkah because you don't even have your table there. That will invalidate it. You hear that, Ariel? Or will it invalidate the sukkah only on a rabbinic level because we're concerned, the rabbis are concerned, one of Yosef, that you shouldn't come to follow your table. If the food is out, if the table which contains the food is outside the sukkah, you might come to go there. So that's the two approaches that the Rishonim, the commentaries have regarding this concern of having a table, a sukkah that does not able to contain your table. But with all that being said, Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak says, and at the end of the day, the halacha, the law says the sukkah, the minimum size of the inside of the sukkah has to be able to also contain your table. If you cannot contain your table, then it's not a kosher sukkah. It's not kosher. Whether it's rabbinically invalid, biblically invalid is a discussion. But at the end of the day, it's not a kosher sukkah. So they say a small table they have a small table right in front of you. The total area is 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim, which is around 28 inches by 28 inches. If you have something, an area that's 28 inches by 28 inches, you could be sitting there with a little table in front of you, having the majority of your body and your head in that sukkah. That is the Here we got three things that have to, your majority of your head, your body, majority of your body, and your, right. Yeah, it's extreme case. The guy is traveling or whatever the case is, so he's somewhere and he's making a sukkah. He's making a sukkah. He wants to eat lunch. What happened is what's the story? The guy, Mr. Batesh, he wants to eat lunch, right? The guy wants to eat lunch, let's say. And he wants to make a smaller sukkah that he can. He wants to make a small sukkah to eat lunch. Right? You can't have bread outside the sukkah throughout the whole holiday, right? You can't have, let's say, an egg size of more than an egg size of bread outside the sukkah. So if you want to have lunch, right? You're at work and you want to have lunch, you want to have bread, you're going to put together so the Torah in a certain sense was lenient on you to make it convenient for you that you could go ahead and have make a bare minimum type of sukkah. You want to eat that lunch. Right? So therefore the Torah gave you such an opportunity. Yes, Ariel. Right. Right. I presume this takes into people's head. I mean, if you're a person being in a sitting position, I mean, yes, the taller person is, but the question is what the Torah talks in the normal average case. The normal average case, a person, if you're sitting down in a sukkah, your head is not coming higher than 40. Your head is not more than 40 inches. So if a guy is in such a situation, the fact that a guy is a giant, and now if he'd be sitting in the sukkah, it won't be enough. But the sukkah itself is a kosher sukkah. He needs a different sukkah for him to be able to get in there. He needs a bigger sukkah. But it's a kosher, right? It's kosher for somebody else. It is the kosher sukkah. He can't. You're right, Ariel. He can't use it. So the Torah talks generally about the average person, the normal person. The average height of a person is around 6 feet tall or something like that close to that. Okay. So now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Shmuel Rav Yitzchak, halacha. So we got the halacha. We are on 3A1 on the right. Halacha sricha shetehei machzeket rosho v'hu v'shechono. It needs to be able to contain his head, majority of body, and his table. By the way, we had other opinion earlier that says that that this is too small. You need to be able to have at least dalet amot. We're going to see. There's another opinion that said it has to be at least dalet amot by dalet amot. That the bare minimum size is 7 feet by 7 feet, which is a much larger area, which you could do much more in 7 feet by 7 feet. You'll have a comfortable laying down in a very comfortable way if you have 7 feet by 7 feet. But that's not the halacha. The bare minimum, and like we said, it makes it much easier for people. So now, Amalei Rav Abba. Rav Abba questions Rav Shmuel Rav Yitzchak. Keman, Beis Shammai? Are you agreeing with Beis Shammai? Because that seems to be Beis Shammai's opinion. Because later on, Beis Hillel says that even if the sukkah does not even contain your table, the sukkah, only you on your head, most of your body and your head are in the sukkah, but your table's outside. Beis Hillel says it's still a kosher sukkah, and the Gemara's understanding now at Beis Hillel is even if the whole size of the sukkah was not wide and long enough to contain your table, it's still a kosher sukkah. So, and now if you're telling me it also has to contain your table, that means you are going like Beis Shammai. And generally, we do not follow the opinion of Beis Shammai. Generally, when there's a machloket between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, who does the law follow? Generally, it follows Beis Hillel. So he's a little bewildered by you saying that it has to contain wide enough and long enough also to contain his table. Beis Hillel does not require that. So Amalei, so he shoots back. Ela Kaman, who do you want me to agree with? Beis Shammai is correct in this case. This case, Beis Shammai is correct. The sukkah has to be able to have enough room to contain the table as well. And therefore, and there Tosfos points out, this is one of the places that one of the Rishonim bring down that the halacha follows Beis Shammai. This is one of the exceptions to the general rule. Okay, that is one version of the Gemara. There's another version of the Gemara that the way he responded to him, Ikadiyami, others say this was the exchange. The exchange between Rav Abba and Rav Shmuel was the following. Amar Rav Abba. Rav Abba said to him, after Rav Shmuel said that you have to be, the size has to be the size of has a table, contain a table, the head and majority of body. The Amalach Mani, who is this? Who are you following? Whose opinion is this? And he said, Amalei Beis Shammai. This is the opinion of Beis Shammai, and lo sazuz mino. And don't move away from it. Meaning to say, even though it is Beis Shammai's opinion, and you might be hesitant to follow and say, if it's Beis Shammai, we don't generally go like Beis Shammai, but in this situation, you need to follow the opinion of Beis Shammai. Now comes the Gemara, Maskef Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak asked the following question. You understand the way your way the Gemara is setting it out, approaching it, is saying, the Gemara is laying it out by saying that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are arguing on the bare minimum size of a sukkah. That Beis Shammai says it has to be enough to contain the table as well, and Beis Hillel says no. As long as you ate in this, you have enough room that you could be in the sukkah. You, the person, is in the sukkah. Doesn't make a difference that your table is not able to. Doesn't make a difference that the sukkah cannot accommodate your table. But Hillel says accommodate you. The Torah doesn't say your table has to sit in the sukkah, because you have to sit in the sukkah. But sukkah's teishu, shiva shamim. You were in the sukkah. You stayed in the sukkah. The majority of your body, your head were in the sukkah. That's good enough. Then the Gemara now says, how do you know that Beis Hillel actually holds that a sukkah that doesn't contain your table is good enough? How do you know that they're arguing about the minimum size of a sukkah? Dilma, perhaps, sukkah gedola pligi. Maybe the argument Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel later on is by a very nice size sukkah. The sukkah contains the table, and it could be a very wide sukkah. And the reason and the argument is, do we say that we make a gezerah? Do we say that if your table is outside of, let's say you have a massive sukkah, big, nice, wide open, big sukkah, but for some reason you want to be by the entranceway of the sukkah. Let's say you want to get you want to get the air. It's very whatever you don't want to be. You want to get this, whatever the reason is. You want to sit by the entranceway of the sukkah, right? Wherever your entranceway of the sukkah is, and you want to be there. You want to hear what's going on. You want to be closer. Whatever the reason why you want to sit by the entranceway of the sukkah. But the way you set yourself up is that the table is right outside the sukkah, and you're sitting by the entranceway of the sukkah, and you are sitting with your body and the majority of your body and your head. You're in the sukkah, but your table is right outside the sukkah. But the sukkah is a nice wide sukkah. It's not that we're talking about the sukkah only contains your head and your most of your body. And that maybe that's where the argument is. Maybe they're not arguing on the bare minimum size of the sukkah. Maybe everybody holds that the bare size of a sukkah has to be at least that it can have your table in it. And the sukkah that they're arguing in, that Beis Hillel says is kosher, is when it has the size of your table also in it. But what's the problem? Even though it has the size to fit your table and your body, good morning, but you place your table outside the sukkah. You had 100 feet sukkah, you decided you wanted your table right outside the sukkah, near the house. You set up. The ladies wanted to set up the table there. And now the question is, can you sit in a sukkah where your table is right outside the sukkah? So Mr. Asmi says, no, what's the problem? So Mr. Asmi is with Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says you're fine. You're in a sukkah, that you have the proper dimensions inside the sukkah is proper. The height of the sukkah is proper. What's the problem? Right? The sukkah ends there, and your table. Right. So what's the problem? So Beis Hillel says no problem. Beis Shammai says we have a problem. What's the problem? You might leave the sukkah. You might not eat it. Since your food, the table, which you're taking the food from to eat, right? Here's my table. I take the food from the table and I eat it. But I might come to, what'd you say? I'm under the sukkah, right? But since the food is outside, right? Since the food is out, my table's outside the sukkah, so there's a concern that I might come to eat the food outside the sukkah, because that's where the food is. The food is outside the sukkah on the table. It's true, the table is adjacent to the sukkah, but the fact that the table where the food is outside the sukkah, so Beis Shammai is concerned that maybe you're going to tilt your head out, which the food that's on the table, and it comes out. If I tilt my head out, I'm eating outside a sukkah. I'm not in a sukkah anymore. So that's the problem. That's Beis Shammai's concern. Beis Hillel's not concerned. So that's what the Gemara is suggesting. Dilma, the sukkah gedola pligi. Maybe they're arguing on a nice size sukkah. The Yasef apuma nemetulta. You're sitting by the entranceway of the sukkah of shulchan b'toch habayit. The table is actually in the house, right? Let's say you made the sukkah right adjacent to your house, and the table is right inside your house, and now you're sitting there. Beis Shammai savri gazrinan. Beis Shammai says maybe we make it gzeira shema yimashech hashulchan. You'll follow your table, and your table is outside with the food. Maybe you're going to tilt your head outside, and you're going to eat the food outside the sukkah. A decree. It's a decree. No, right. Beis Hillel Savri, Beis Hillel says, Lo Gazrina. We don't make a decree. We don't make a decree to say that maybe we're afraid you're going to go outside, put your head outside the sukkah. Maybe Beis Hillel says, listen, you know what you're doing here. You know what are you sitting in the sukkah to eat in the sukkah? We don't have to be afraid of that. And v'dekanami, and the Gemara says, and the language seems to be implying that. The language of the Mishnah, where we find the argument of Beis Hillel, seems to indicate that, because it says Diktani, it says Mi shehaya rosho v'rubo basukkah. The case that they were arguing was someone whose head and the majority of his body were in a sukkah, v'shulchano b'toch habayit, but the table was inside the house. Beis Shammai poslim. Beis Shammai says it's no good. And Beis Hillel machshirin. Beis Hillel says it's good. If you ate in the sukkah, even if the table's outside the sukkah, Beis Hillel says it's good. V'im ita, and if they're arguing about the size of a sukkah, so does a sukkah have to be able to have enough area to contain a table? So the Mishnah should have read differently. It should have said marzeket. It should have said a sukkah that's able to hold a table and a person and a head, that's kosher. If not able to, it's not kosher. Why does the Mishnah talk about a case? He's inside the sukkah, the table's outside the sukkah. The Mishnah should have just said, if the sukkah could contain both the table as well, it's kosher, and if not, not. Why does it give the case that he is inside the sukkah and the table's outside the sukkah? So the Gemara wants to say the fact that the Mishnah spoke in that language seems to indicate it's not about the size of the sukkah, the argument is. Because if they're arguing about the size of the sukkah, so the Mishnah should have just said very clearly, a sukkah that could hold a table as well, Beis Shammai says that's kosher. If not, it's not kosher. And Beis Hillel says that it's kosher. Why does the Mishnah talk about, doesn't talk about containing, the Mishnah talks about if he is in the sukkah and his table's outside the sukkah, the Mishnah should have spoken about can the sukkah contain the table or not? The fact that it's spoken in such terms seems to indicate that the issue is not the dimensions of the sukkah, the issue is the table that's outside the sukkah might affect the person who's inside the sukkah. Are we afraid of that concern? That's what the Gemara wants to say. Mr. Safdie, is that clear? So the Gemara wants
Rabbi,
to say,
could it be that what's more important, eating in the sukkah or sleeping in the sukkah?
okay,
The chiyuv is eating, Rabbi. One
but
night.
also,
One
but
night.
there's also the mitzvah is also to sleep in a sukkah. The mitzvah
Because
says,
if the chiyuv is really which one is more important? Because if it's really eating, then the table makes sense. If it's really sleeping, then having a table is not that important.
okay, but let's say David, you need both needs to be done. Let's say, right? We know both. Again, if your majority of your body's in the sukkah, you're sitting on that couch, you're leaning in, you're sleeping. You're sleeping on that couch, Mr. Ed. You got a nice couch, and you're sitting on it. A part of it maybe is outside, but most of it is inside. You're sitting on the couch, and you're leaning on your side, and you're sleeping. Okay. It's like, remember the fact that it's a temporary type of dwelling. Yaakov, it says Yaakov Avinu did not sleep. It says Vayishka v'mokom. He slept in that place, but for the 14 years that he was in the yeshiva, he didn't sleep. So the question is, what do you mean he didn't sleep? Of course he had to sleep. He didn't go to sleep in a bed. There are a lot of people that they fall asleep. You ever see Friday night at the table? Anybody ever see them fall asleep at the table? Right? You fall asleep, but you didn't go to sleep. You fell asleep. Okay, so the Gemara says, now the Gemara shoots back. You want to suggest that the whole argument is by a big sukkah. And you want to say that Beis Hillel would agree that there's a minimum dimensions of a sukkah has to also be able to contain your table as well. That's what you want to suggest. So the Gemara shoots back. I'll show you that's not so. You think that Beis Hillel is not arguing about a small sukkah? You think Beis Hillel is not arguing on dimensions of a sukkah? V'hatanya, we have a braita. Marzeket rosho rubo v'shulchano. A sukkah that's able to contain the majority of your head, the majority of your body and your table, Keshera. Opinion number one. Rebbe says, Am shehei arba amot al arba amot. This is the opinion everybody feels a lot better with. The sukkah has to be at least 7 feet by 7 feet. If it's not 7 feet by 7, which is the normal type of a room that a person dwells in. What is the size of a room to be chayiv in a sukkah, in a mezuzah? 4 amot by 4 amot. A room that's 7 feet by 7 feet, that's a room. And therefore, his opinion is, the Torah says you have to dwell in a sukkah. It has to be a type of a room. If it's not a room, if you didn't create a dwelling place that's a normal type of living place, that's a normal type of living, you leave your house and you live in a sukkah. So he holds that's not a kosher sukkah, which is in sync with what a lot of people would like to say, but even though that's not the halakha. So he said there has to be 7 feet by 7 feet. That's his opinion. Now, that's the opinion of Rebbe. Now, the Tanya Idach, and we have another Braita. The Braita says the following. Rebbe says, Kol sukkah she'ein bo arba amot al arba amot, a sukkah that does not have 4 amot by 4 amot, stula. It's invalid, right? The Chachamim say, afilu eino marzeket ela rosho v'rubo k'sheira. The Chachamim say, even if it only contains the majority of your body and your head, it doesn't even have enough size to contain your table. V'yu shulchani lo ktani. Doesn't say it has to be big enough to contain your table as well. Elam shma mina, habe Shammai, habe Hillel. So who is this opinion that says that it even doesn't have to contain your table? We see that Beis Hillel says it doesn't even have to contain the table. And tomorrow we'll continue more with this Gemara. Have a great day, everybody.
Great day, Rabbi.
Succah.
They have to be not 7 feet by 7 feet, but they're
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a great day. At least 28 inches by 28 inches. Right? 28 inches is right? Mark is back with the full. Exactly. He's ready. Okay, so we have two. So we have at least one of your safe. So we have to be at least 28. We hold like by Shammai. At least we hold. So far, we hold that you have to be at least to contain your table as well. If it's not big enough, if the sukkah is small, too small, that can't contain the table. Yes. Yes. Have a great day, everybody. Yosef, have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day. Bye.
It has to be at least 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, 28 inches by 28 inches.